Hi, so I just want to explain how to, um, a simple way to draw shadows onto the object that you are trying to draw. So the first thing to do is definitely get into a position that you really like, pick the view. So I'm going to say worms I1, save. Great. The next thing to do, and not everyone's computer is going to be able to do this super well, so you could go to the rendered view and look at the kinds of dark areas that this gives you and trace that. A slightly better way is to go to this ray traced view, and this is now where if you have a Mac, it's going to start to struggle. Looks like this object is modeled. There's a double, so delete that, remove the double, and see how the surfaces are coming out a little bit nicer now. And then there's some specific settings that I would dial in. One is to go to your lights, turn on the sunlight, and keep the skylight on. Turn down the skylight to 0.2 and turn up the sunlight to 0.8. These are usually my starting settings, and then I figure it out from there. So one thing is that we're underneath the object right now, and so we want to turn our manual control on the sun. And now that we have the manual control on, we can adjust the placement of our light. So we're getting some stuff. In my opinion, if I were to do this drawing, I'd probably flip the whole model upside down. So you see how like we're looking from the underside, but the light that we're getting is only coming from the top because Rhino's set up for us to get light from the top. See this? Every little bit of light is coming from the top. And probably my computer's moving a lot faster than yours will. I wouldn't like move around as rapidly as you're seeing here. This could kind of work, but it's probably going to give us something that's a little darker than we want. And notice how if I go below the 0 line here, this plus 90 to negative 90 represents plus 90 is straight above my head, negative 90 is straight other side of the earth, past ocean, past magma. It's not, there's no sunlight coming. So above 0 gets you light into the image. So what I would do is I would not use this view. This makes it more simple for me, but it seems more confusing. Control-Shift-S, that moves us back to shaded. I would take the object and rotate it like this, 180 degrees. That way up, that way down is now pointed up on my object. I move back to basically the view that I was trying to get. And now I would save this, Worm's Eye 2. Great. And if I were to use this, I would draw my line work from here. Here, I can take some of this line work. Okay. Give it the appropriate time to load. And now, switching this to top here, ZS to refine that, and I'm going to pull it down here. This line work is showing not a worm's eye, it's an upside down worm's eye, because we're underneath it here. So in order to make this right side up, you have to rotate it 180 degrees, and now we're underneath the thing again. Notice how that's getting us back to this view when the thing was rotated. I'll just do it one more time. Getting us back there, except for that the angle that we're at is flipped. So maybe, since that's the case, we should also flip the angle like this, so that we can get closer to that original image. So I'm looking at something like this. You can also go and type in isometric and get a perfect ISO, but I'm not going to do that for now. Because I think I've just played with this thing for a little while, and I think an odd angle is better, as long as we have over here, this is set to parallel. Keep that in parallel. Don't make this drawing in perspective. It doesn't make sense as a drawing in perspective. So I'm going to, one more time, do a make 2D there, and take the line work, and bring it over here to our other display. Great. And remember, it's upside down the way this is upside down. So I'm going to flip it 180, get it right side up. And there we go. That's the angle that I actually wanted to see it at. So delete. Now I'm going to go back to my ray trace and employ that technique. Great. Here we are. I want to get my light looking a little better. So I'm just going to cast a little bit more bright light onto the object. You can already tell that this looks like some of the references that Muhammad gave us. One that was done by the partner of Tom Main for Morphosis. What I'm really doing at this point is I'm just looking at all the shadows that this makes and trying to think, are those representing the form the way I want to represent the form? Can I do it like that? Okay. Let's say I'm going to go with this. This is modeled, probably not the best. You definitely want to close all these things to get a better image. But if I make this full screen, it'll render a little larger. There's literally no reason that you should have to let this thing go all the way to 1,000 or whatever it's going to go up to. Those settings can all be adjusted in here. We do render settings. Type in rendering to get up, not render, rendering to get up this dialog if you want to play around in there. But to extract this image, we can do view capture to clipboard. Clipboard just means the Control C, that's your clipboard. I'm hitting OK. It's going to be at the resolution of my viewport, which is perfectly fine. You could save that file somewhere else on your computer. So I switched out the image that I'm using to this one, and I resaved the worm's eye like that. So I'm going to go make 2D. Brilliant. I'll bring that line work over there, and then I'm going to match up the image to the line work. I do not change the scale of the line work because this is dimensionally accurate, but this image is not. The image is just rasterized. Type in the word scale. I'm going to find a point, 2 common points between the image and the vectors. Great. We have those 2 things overlaying each other. Which is perfect. Now, the name of the game is to trace that shadow. So I'm going to just make a new layer that says shadow trace. And I could honestly turn off my I'm also going to make a new layer for the image. I turn off the drawings, and I can literally use a curve or this is an interpolating curve or any kind of thing, and just start to define where the shadow line is. So I could define it up kind of high like this. There's something really imperfect about how that's modeled there, so I don't know if I want to follow that. Maybe I should make it a little better than it actually is supposed to be. Let's go with this kind of curve. Kind of gives me something. I'm gonna lock the image,
I'll draw another curve over here. Right now, I'm actually not really tracing the shadow. I'm kind of tracing the highlight. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's good. It's a good way to look. Let's say that's our middle tone, and then this starts to become our darker tones. I'm trying to use my eyes to trace that slightly darker tone as well. And then I'm going to say that this is where I transition again into that darker, darker tone. Okay. Great. Um, there's a very clear transition between light and shadow here that I can just trace over. And these holes in there that I wouldn't count that as the place to trace. These edges definitely, like right here. And notice I'm kind of cutting my lines short. That's because I know that I have enough information with my other lines to make to use the hatches appropriately. So this is a much darker zone. So I think I'm going to think about that even as a darker hatch. I'm going to do many layers of hatch for this, but you could also just do one. And I'll point out that it really is a different kind of thing. And right here I'm getting to a really jagged area, so I'm going to switch over to just a polyline. But I'll point out that this is a very different kind of thing than making a cast shadow. Cast shadow is where we're putting the shadow onto the ground or some other object, but this kind of shadow is reflecting onto itself. It's a self casting shadow. Okay, I'm not doing this perfect, but I would think you should do it just a little better than that. A bit fast. Great. I'm seeing another huge shadow piece over here. I'm going to add another line here that's defining the difference between the shadow above and the slightly lighter area. It's kind of a highlight, yeah. Now I'm actually in a zone that's more than the highlight. Cool, cool. Yeah, unlock. I could have also locked this thing here. I'm just gonna turn it off. Those are the little regions that we've traced so far. Let's get some more going. I'm gonna trace using a polyline here again. I'm just going to define that color difference right there is where my shadow is. I don't love where I defined that. Maybe I'll change it to this. converges right there. Okay, that's one way to cast a shadow. Another little change. Looks about right to me. Also make this a little darker right here. Definitely make this darker. I'm defining the limit between light and dark. That's one way of thinking about what this is doing. Maybe another middle tone. No, that middle tone doesn't need to be one. And then I could go through and nail in some more of these, but I think let's just try to do a little bit of patching and see where this gets us. Patches, I turn back on that make 2D, and colors are fine. I'm gonna add all of them to a layer with my that is like a medium. Shadow trace. Change this right here. I know that this shouldn't be open, so I'm just gonna edit it. The better your model is, the less of this kind of editing you're gonna have to do, but there's a limit. Make 2D itself is not perfect. Like that line, it's actually not even that whole line, it's just that control point that definitely shouldn't be there. And I know it seems sometimes like that kind of thing you can get away with. You cannot get away with it. Meaning like everyone can see. Yeah, like I can see that from a mile away. That's smooth on the inside and moving that. Okay. I do need to do these kind of little drawing things, or else it's gonna be completely illegible, even if I add shadows and all that stuff. Right. Let's switch our tracing back on. Use the image for reference. This is a light color. I'm gonna move that curve. I'm gonna add a hatch with a boundary, so I hit B, enter. First layer of patches I want to put there. Looks like I didn't have a closed curve, so I extend this past and extend this past. And now if I type in hatch again, I'll be able to put one layer of patches there. Let's put the same kind of patch right here. Looks like I don't have fully extended trace lines. Patch one more time. This one is also not fully extended. Cool. Those should definitely be lighter, so let's switch them to a scale of 4. Alright, that's really dense. 40. It's probably still too dense actually, so let's go to 80. And I'm going to make the rotation at an angle like this. Still too dense. 120. Still feels pretty dense actually, but maybe I want to switch that over to like a little bit of a gray. It's kind of a bad habit I have. It's looking better. This is going to be patches layer 1. This is going to be patches 2. I'm going to make them both the same exact. Just change simply the color that I had already used. So I'm going to match this, but now I'm going to change the scale to 60. And now I'm going to turn off the tracing shadows. Great. See how that's giving us like a bubbly look? This is brilliant. I like doubling the layers or the lines because see how we have empty, full, you know? But these things are lining up. Sometimes people do it in a way where it doesn't line up, or maybe it's even just like this. That's sloppy. I don't really like that. This is much better for me. But, you know, to everyone's own discretion. I know because this foot is at the bottom of the ground that this bottom layer here should be a darker hatch. So I'm using the one right here to be that one. It could go even darker. And notice I'm saying darker, but I actually mean the density of the line. So here I just went down to 30. I'm gonna make that my copying the color, move it over to that layer. Cool, brilliant. You get how to, I think, move through the whole project, but maybe I'm just going to apply it again over here so that we can just see one more example. So let's reference that image. Okay, so this is our whiter zone. This is our slightly hatched zone. Type in the word hatch. It's the first layer of patching, so right here. As long as I select the region within one fell swoop, it will come through. And these kind of issues we actually could fix later with trimming. I'm going to match the hatch to that style. And trim that little extra cushion off. All these little things need to get fixed. If I can say once again, like I know it could seem sometimes like you can get away with leaving these things. It is immediately apparent to anyone who looks at drawings a lot. Cool. Add the little hatch right here. Might be in the same style because it's immediately following the previous one. Cool, and then the slightly. Ooh, uh-oh, I missed one. I'm going to actually chamfer at a distance of 0 to get those points to join. And then I'm going to do another patch. I've moved over to a slightly different layer. Oh, this region isn't closed, so we have an issue somewhere. Maybe it's that. Join. Matching that one. Okay. Brilliant. Kind of works, kind of sloppy. Turn off the image. Retracing. Great. And I think you can tell these two spots are much more, there's something to them. You can also totally take these fills and just make them solid or export them to Illustrator totally solid and then convert all of them in Illustrator to the hatches that you want to define there. That's also totally in play because remember, or maybe it's something worth noting that like if I move this hatch over and I have my print display on, state toggle. Center. And I'm gonna move this to like the medium layer. You might not be reading perfectly the thickness that you're gonna get in the end in Rhino. Maybe it's gonna come out like that. Maybe it's like this is a little too dense if that's the thickness that we're using. So I would need to use something more like that. Okay, I think you get the idea. Work through the whole project like this, and work through every drawing like this. This is just to define the shadows, or the shading on top of the surface you're using, and then of course after this you cast a shadow onto the onto itself, onto the ground, onto that's another form of projection. I hope that helps. Good luck to all of you. See you soon.